Good evening and welcome to Conversations from Backstage. I have a very special guest with me tonight, Kimberly Frick Welker. She is an accomplished director and actress and also works with me here at CPAC as the Cultural Arts
Production Assistant.
Just pretty much everything like we all do.
Yeah.
Just do whatever we need to do to get everything running, I guess. And I brought her on tonight because I wanted to talk about a specific show that she did, which is unique in a few ways. It's called The Last Flapper. It was a one-woman show, which I don't think we've ever done any one man or one woman besides The Last Flapper.
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah, not to my knowledge either.
Yeah.
I don't believe that's
Yeah.
something we usually do, but it was a very good show. And also it was done specifically for competition, correct?
Correct. Yes. I had done the show previously about 15 years earlier, and I just kind of put a bug in Chad's ear one time and said, you know what, I've always wanted to revisit this show because I didn't feel I did Zelda justice. So I put the bug in his ear.
Just for everybody at home, the show is about Zelda Fitzgerald.
Oh.
Sorry, I meant to get to that, and we didn't.
And
we started
I jumped
the conversation.
ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Zelda Fitzgerald, who is the wife of F. Scott Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Their marriage is not a good one. We'll just say that. And this is from Zelda's point of view after F. Scott has put her in a asylum, I guess is the best word for it. Probably unfairly, most likely unfairly, that he did that to her, and then treated her very badly after that.
Well, yeah, I did a lot of research on Zelda Fitzgerald, and visited Highlands, North Carolina, in Asheville, visited Highlands Hospital in Asheville, North Carolina, where she perished at age 48. Actually went to Montgomery, Alabama, to her home. Did a lot of research on Zelda, and the way this all came about, if anyone remembers Bruce Welker from performances here, he now lives in Cape Girardeau, but he is a huge Ernest Hemingway fan. Mm-hmm. And you played Ernest Hemingway.
I did, yes.
Yes, in what was Scott and Ham?
Yeah, Scott and Ham, yeah.
Which is just, so as I sat in the audience and watched your performance, I couldn't help but channel Zelda, and I was just so angry,
Yeah.
so angry.
Yeah.
But so he was a huge Ernest Hemingway fan, and as I started researching with him, started researching Zelda, and I felt her story wasn't fully told, and not told accurately, and then found this play, this one-woman play called The Last Flapper, and it's based on Zelda's writings. These are her words that William Luce put together, and he places it in the last night of her life at Highlands Hospital. She was locked in a room and perished in a fire there. So as I said, I did the research, I did the show back home in Southern Illinois, and when I started working here, I put a bug in Chad's ear that if he ever, needed something for competition or just wanted to try something that required minimal set for Backstage, I'd be interested in revisiting the role, and then the opportunity came in 2011.
That's great. It's actually a pretty special show for me as well, because that's actually the first show that I ever worked on here. I started in 2012. You had taken it to competition at TTA
Yes.
in 2011,
Yes.
and you had won Best Production there.
Yes, we got Best Production, Best Director, and Best Actress. So
Yeah.
It was a good night for
Yeah,
us.
sounds like it. And my predecessor, Brandon Walls, was the technical director at the time, but he had been going to school at Tech and had decided to move on to another job after he graduated. I was hired on in October of 2011, and we were taking this to competition. It's a pretty special show for me. It was very interesting to do. So one of the unique things about it, like I said, is that it was done specifically for competition.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you ever had anything. Well, we had a few performances here. Is it
Yes,
correct?
we the first time we staged it before we went to state competition, we staged it as a backstage show. The audience actually sat up on the stage. And then when it advanced from state and we knew it was going to go to regionals, we did another night of performances as a main stage production because that's how it was going to be presented at regionals.
Right.
And so staged it again here, and I'll tell you what, if you ever want to challenge yourself as an actor, actress, do a one-person show. There's no one to lean on, no one to help you out, but I had a phenomenal stage manager who happens to be my daughter, Heather Frick, and she knows me, she knows how I work, how I operate, and within the show, Zelda, she's all over the place. 1 minute she's breaking the fourth wall, she's talking to the audience, she's talking to her husband, she's talking to Ernest, she's talking to her mother and father who passed away, and she has these manic moments, and in one of those manic moments, I couldn't remember where I was, and the character is pacing, and I'm pacing, and I work my way around where my back is to the audience, and I work over stage right, and Heather knew I was in trouble. She fed me the line, and I kept going, and man,
Good.
that's the kind of stage manager you need, especially when you're doing a one-person show, so I have to give her a shout-out.
Well, good. And that was one of the questions I was going to ask you. And also, I guess, you had kind of thought of this as something you'd done before, and, you kind of knew what you were doing, but you asked Steve to come along as an eye out in the audience, and I think that he helped with that a lot.
It was the best decision ever. I knew that if it was one thing to do it back home, and Bruce, kind of helped me out, but it was self-directed, and I don't recommend that to anyone. Don't direct yourself. You really need someone out there as your audience, your eyes and ears, and looking at it from different angles and giving you feedback. And so I asked Steve if he would come on board as my director, and I did the show the way that I had rehearsed it with the furniture and everything on stage, and he came up with some of the best tweaks. I mean, stand up on the sofa and sit on the back of the sofa, and why don't you stand up on the desk? That would be very Zelda-like, and I have to credit him for taking it to a whole nother level, and I think that's what impressed the adjudicators at both competitions.
Yeah, I believe so. I'm sure I didn't see it until after it had already been tweaked, and I'm sure it was great even before it was tweaked, but I know that Steve has a very good eye for that kind of thing, so I'm sure that raised the level even more.
What was cool is that there are a lot of voiceovers. You hear her mother, you hear Scott, you hear, because it's in a mental institution, there's stuff over the loudspeaker, and that triggers a memory for her, and she goes into different directions. I had already recorded those on a little cassette tape, and we were able to transfer that. Brandon was able to transfer that over. So it was the recordings that we used were the original recordings that I'd done 15 years previously.
Oh, cool! I didn't know that.
Yeah. So
Very
that was
neat.
pretty cool too.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And this one is just really close to my heart for so many reasons. I feel that Zelda people know her as a socialite and alcoholic, whatever, and that she was kind of a thorn in F. Scott Fitzgerald's side. But she was his muse. He used her a lot for inspiration for his different novels. They truly did love each other. They were married for over 20 years. The love letters back and forth are something to read. But she was an artist in her own right. She was a prolific painter, and a lot of people don't know that about her. But her artwork, you can see, she started out with these beautiful paper dolls for their daughter Scotty, and intricate paper dolls and clothing and stuff. And then she went into this kind of a circus-like French Paris theme. But then she, depending on her moods, and people said she was schizophrenic. A lot of people now say she wasn't. She might have been bipolar, whatever. But it was the shock treatment and medications that were given to her that are legal now. That'd make anybody schizophrenic.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So you see that in her paintings. All of a sudden, she goes into this gothic, dark mode, and then towards the end of her life, her paintings are very ethereal, so it was just so important to me to share her story and try to do it justice.
I think you did.
Well,
I think you very much did. And it's great to talk about the women that are a part of these men's lives that they're in the forefront of history. F. Scott, Ernest Hemingway,
Right.
But she was an influence on both of those people that I just mentioned, and they tended to shunt her aside and keep her in the background, and it's not a good thing that's been the case for so long. So it's good to talk about him. I'm glad that she was the forefront of this story that you did. But I specifically wanted to talk about this show with you because we've both been to competition in many different roles, and this one went specifically to competition. I'd like to. Most people don't even know that there is a theater competition, first of all,
Right.
And secondly, how that even works. So, can you just kind of go through how how you go to competition and what you do while you're
Well,
there.
for community theater, and we're considered community theater here, you go to your state level conference, and as you know, you're given a 10 by 10 square. Your entire set has to fit in there. You have 10 minutes to set up. You do your show. It has to be within under an hour. If it's a little over an hour, you're disqualified. And then you have 10 minutes to strike, and then you have to go out and sit out in the house. Now, all your peers, competition, whoever, are out there watching, and you have to sit out there, and these adjudicators, usually it's 3 adjudicators, will come out and give you feedback. And if you're smart, you'll listen to that feedback.
Yeah, always.
Because, I've been on the other side too. I've also been an adjudicator on the state and regional level, but
yeah.
So it's subjective. I mean, as you know,
Oh, yeah, always.
a judge's opinion is subjective, but take it in and absorb it, and if it makes sense, if you feel like you can apply, use that, because that's what I did on the state level, and that's the other thing about doing a one-person show. It's just, when they're talking to the actors, it's just you, and then they will talk to the director and the tech and stuff. So I asked for that feedback. I wrote down the notes. Steve and I talked about it. We applied what we thought would enhance the show, and then we took it to regionals. At regionals, that's huge. How many people would you say are there? A couple thousand people? I mean, it's
for the whole conference, or
yes,
for the whole conference, it's huge. Yeah, yeah.
And then you have what, 11 to 12 states in the Southeast region that your theater company is competing against. And for me, there were, I think I counted, there were 27 other female actresses involved in shows that year. Phenomenal shows, they were just great. And there was another one-person show. It was a gentleman who was doing I Am My Own Wife. And so I remember one of the adjudicators I talked to afterwards said, it's hard to sit through a one-person show. And when I saw there were going to be 2 at competition, he said, I thought, oh my gosh. Well, come to find out, the gentleman, I'm sorry, I can't remember his name or where he's from, but he got the Best Actor award, and then I ended up getting Best Actress. So that goes to prove that, you can do a one-person show and still compete against these big musicals and everything else if you have the right director and you just have the right team together to make it happen.
And we avoided this in your show, or you avoided this in your show, but just so you at home know, it's kind of an inside joke in theater about one-person shows, the oh, hello moment, which is usually a one-person show, the lights come up, the person turns around in a chair and goes, oh, hello, I didn't see you there. Like they didn't know that the audience was there. She just acted as if she was Zelda and you could just see her. It was great. Yeah. But that's what that judge was talking about. Watching a one-person show, a lot of people write their own one-person shows and star in them and do all this stuff, and it doesn't have the feedback that you took from Steve and from Chad and from other people, and Bruce and all these people that you took and internalized. It's just got that one-person feel, and that tends to not be great theater. Whereas yours, and I do remember now that you're talking about the guy that was there, they were both very good theater.
Many characters. So here he is, one man playing many characters. Here I am playing Zelda Fitzgerald, who emotionally and mentally, she's just all over the place, talking to characters that we don't see. And it was, these are her words, her pain, her joy, her frustration, her anger, and you just wanted to do it justice. And the biggest compliment that I remember receiving is, there was a group from Montgomery, Alabama there, and they said, I was walking to the car, and they said, hey, Zelda, you can come down and see us anytime, and we've corresponded ever since. But it was a great experience, and I have to thank Chad for allowing me to take on that challenge, because it was I was at a point in my life where I really wanted to challenge myself. And to you and to Brandon and our stage manager Heather and Steve for making me feel safe. The other moment I remember at Southeast Regionals, and this was in Chattanooga this year, massive dressing room. It was just a big dressing room, and I'm just sitting there by myself. You guys were off doing other stuff, and I'm just sitting. You don't have a castmate and fellow actor. So what I did was I have all these books of Zelda, books of her paintings and her work and everything else, and I just had them up there with her kind of looking at me. And, you know, so we're in this together, lady.
Yeah, that's good. Just to go back to the competition part, you explained that, you know, you have the 10 minutes set up, you have to do the play in under an hour, or you're disqualified, and then, you know, you 10 minutes to strike your set. We've talked before on the show a little bit about what goes on, you know, to create a show here. You know, it takes weeks to do that. And we've done a lot of the work up front for the shows that we take to competition. But then that's still, we go to another location and we have to set the show in this location technically and for the actors, you know. So we only have 1 hour technical rehearsal to be able to set the whole setup, lights, sound, let the actor get used to that.
And so let all of you get used to the equipment and because your whole crew is putting together a set, although the set didn't take very long.
No,
but then you all have to go to your stations, to the sound booth and the light booth or wherever. And in some places, I don't remember where it was, but it was like a maze trying to get, you're going down these hallways, and it's like, oh my gosh, which door? And
I believe that was in Atlanta. I think it was Spelman College,
maybe,
actually, because it was I think it was this little tiny window. It wasn't like a, you know, that you could barely see out of, and you had to go and circle through. It was crazy.
Yeah, so if you can imagine going to unfamiliar territory, you have diagrams and you're given notes and stuff, but you get there and you have 1 hour to figure it all out.
Yeah.
To if you have any specials, if you have anything that you need extra, you get that set up. You do a couple of sound checks. You don't have time to rehearse the whole thing. You pick and choose what you're going to do and what you need to focus on, and then next thing you know, you're performing in front of a group of your adversaries and adjudicators and.
It's a very stressful feeling when you're out there acting for it. It's just more stressful than just doing it for people, because you're just wanting them to enjoy it. You know, you're not worried about the little things that you're doing, but you're really, like, most of the people that are watching you are in another show or are a part of another show. And
they're trying to be supportive, but they're also taking notes.
Yeah, they're also going, oh, well, they messed up there, you know, or, you know,
getting
whatever.
You scores. Yeah, that's what I do.
And then you've got 3 adjudicators as well that are definitely very, you know, they are judges. They're judging you, and so it's very, very hard to go and act.
Well,
it's
I'm not going to name names, but we have one actress when we took Other Desert Cities, which you and I were both in. I played your mother, and that was a powerful, intense, emotionally draining show. And one person involved in that show says she's never going to do competition again. I mean, it
can sap you.
Yeah,
and I don't know that I'll do much acting in competition anymore. I enjoy doing the technical side of it because it's a challenge, like you were saying the acting was. It's very much a challenge to design a set, to make sure that you can set it up, do all the lights there, and make sure that it looks like a fully fleshed out play, because that's what the adjudicators are looking for. They know that you can't do everything technically, but they do want you to flesh it out as much as you possibly can with all of that.
And if it's a full-length 2.5-hour show, you have to cut that down to under 60 minutes. Well, The Last Flapper is a 2.5-hour show. So I cut it down to 45 minutes because I wanted to give myself room to do whatever. That's difficult too. That's extremely challenging for a director and the actors, because then you have to, it feels like you're ripping part of your heart out here and here and there, and then you have to get down to the main heartbeat of the show. So that's the other challenge.
And that, you know, that's 2.5, you said 2.5 hours. Sometimes I found, and just because I've been a part of a lot of them, the longer ones are easier to cut than the ones that are like
just over an hour.
Yeah, they're like hour 20 or whatever, because it's already such a tight show. You're like, you don't want to take anything out because you lose the thread or whatever. That's actually been one of my favorite things about competition, is cutting the scripts.
You directed that one went to competition. What was that, a full length?
I mean, it's considered a one act, but it was an hour and 25 minutes, or maybe just 20 minutes, something like that, fully, you know, and trying to cut that down and get it, you know, because you want to get it to about 15 minutes. So you've got some playing room in case anything goes wrong. So anyway, I didn't mean to get off track of what we were talking about, but just talking about competition, that is very interesting.
There's just so much more to it than just taking your troupe over and performing. I mean, there really is, and it starts with the script, especially if it's a full-length play. You have got to cut it down. So imagine, because there are theaters who bring musicals
Yeah.
you know, full-length musicals, and they've got to cut it down to under an hour. I mean, we saw Sweeney Todd one year.
Yeah, yeah. It usually gets cut down to basically the songs and like one or two words in between the songs, what it seems like. But yeah,
and that's the other thing, both from performing. The other thing is you're representing your state. So I mean, there's a lot on your shoulders, a lot of pressure. You want to do well and represent well. But as an adjudicator, and also as somebody who when I go, I don't know about you, but when we go to competition, I like to sit out there and watch all the shows as much as I can. Because I learned so much.
Yes.
I learned so much watching the other actors. I'm re-inspired, but listening to the adjudicators' notes to the other companies. But it's challenging, and now that I've been on the other side as an adjudicator, you've got a one-person show, you've got a large-scale musical, you've got a comedy, you've got a dramedy, and a drama. And so how do you figure out the best show? Then you go by your criteria. Is it fully realized? Is everybody, does it mesh? And technically, did it work? I mean, there's so many different things. Adjudicating is hard, I'll tell you.
Yeah. I mean, those adjudicators want everybody to succeed, I'm sure,
Yes.
but they're there to, do what they can. And the theater competition, it almost seems like an oxymoron, like we shouldn't be doing it because art is subjective and things like that. But what you just said is why I believe in it and why I like doing it, is that you learn so much in a short period of time. You get to go see like 10 or 12 plays, and then hear what they did right and what they could have improved on, and all these things. I've learned so much technically. I've learned about plays that I want to do.
Yes.
All these things. And so at the end of the day, it doesn't really. It's fun to win, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, the reason we do it, or at least the reason I like to do it and want to do it more, is the fact that you can learn so much in such a short time.
I agree. I mean, it is educational. It's a way to continue on with your craft. It's also a great way to network with other theaters, and then you start following other theaters and what they're doing and supporting each other, because I don't care what state you live in, when you're in theater, it's a huge family.
And community theater is community,
Community
whether it's,
worldwide.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. So, I've been here, I'm starting my 14th year here, and I've made a lot of great friendships through this, and been re-inspired. You get burned out sometimes. You get cynical, and if you're able to go to your state level competition and then your regional, and then if you're fortunate enough to go to national, which is just a whole nother ball game, but you truly are re-inspired seeing all this wonderful work. And then they bring in guest artists that they interview, and that's cool to hear their stories. And
the conferences and the competitions are where I've learned the most about theater, I'd say, rather than just doing it here and being in this little bubble where we do it the same way and everything. You find out how to do it differently and how to do it better. So. Well, thank you so much, Kim, for joining me. This has been a really cool look into what we do in competition and a one-woman show, which I've never been a part of any one-person show. So it's a cool look at it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.